everybody. It's Wednesday. It's 11 a.m. Eastern. It's 4 p.m. UK. It's 5 p.m. Continental. It's o'clock wherever you are in the world. Actually, unless you're in India where it's hot past the hour. But it is Benivo Bites. It's the big one. We have got a great show for you today. So you know what to do. We want to know who's out there. Join the conversation. Write in the comments box. Tell us who you are, where you are. Tell us everything that's going on, all the things you want to hear about. And of course, as we go through the session today, please ask us questions. We want to engage with you. We want you to engage with us, and we want you to engage with each other. Our aim is to bring the community together. Today on Benivo Bites, we're going to be talking about Core Flex. It's one of the biggest issues facing mobility at the moment. How do you design a flexible program? We're going to be talking about lump sum. We're going to be talking about Core Flex. We're going to be talking about the difference. But most importantly, we're not going to be talking to you about the why, about whether Core Flex is a good thing or not a good thing. We're going to be talking to you about the how. How do you actually implement something like Core Flex? And we're going to be talking about it. We're going to talk about a very specific methodology about how you can implement Core Flex, and indeed showing you some amazing technology that shows you how you can actually implement Core Flex in practice. So as I said, we've got a great show. I won't spend too long on the intro because we've got so much to be talking to. And just hello, I see all these names of people coming in from all over the world. It's just great to see you. I've been seeing people from the States, from India, from Europe, from the UK. So many thanks to everybody who's tuning in. It's great to see you all. What else have we got coming up in over the next few weeks? Well, next week, we've got The View from the Top meets Catherine Birchall from Sky and Talia Levy from ECA. So we're going to be talking about the Sky Mobility Program. We're going to be talking about how ECA supports that program and that particular partnership between the two great organizations. So that's next week on The View from the Top. And the week after, back in, and by then we're in July, believe it or not, the week after, we've got a live case study with a really prestigious company. We've got GE on the show, and we're going to be showing you how GE implement the Benivo solution for one of their particular populations. So you won't want to miss that. That's in a couple of weeks' time. So we've got lots of really good stuff coming up. But as ever, we always like to have an immigration update. And of course, we have our very own resident immigration expert. You know who it is, of course. It's the one, it's the only, it's Julia Onslow-Cole. So let's dive straight in and let's get Julia onto the show to talk about today's immigration update.
Brian.
Julia, how are you doing?
Very well, thanks. Very well.
Great to have you back. And this might be your last week in the UK for a while. You're traveling again?
Yeah, I'm going back to Dubai.
Excellent. Okay, and how long are you going to be out there for?
Not very long. No, just for a quick visit, and then I'm going back to Europe.
Okay. So talking of Europe, what are you going to be talking to us about today?
Well, I'm talking about the EU settlement scheme and what's happening in the UK, but more importantly, what's happening in Europe. And that's because the deadline's next Wednesday.
Okay, so tell us all about it.
Yeah, so first of all, big shout out to Christine Sullivan, who helped me with this, our partner in Amsterdam. So next Wednesday, 30th of June, and that's the deadline for EU citizens who were resident in the UK before the end of last year to apply under the EU settlement scheme. And as feared, there's been this huge push of applications and there's been difficulty with people getting on the system. But one of the things I really wanted to highlight today is you still have to apply, even if you're an EU citizen that's holding permanent residence or a European residence card as a European national or a family member. You have to still do the EU settlement scheme or apply for naturalization before next Wednesday. And a lot of people are only just realizing this. And if you don't, it could cause all sorts of problems with your ability to continue to work, rent, or access healthcare in the UK. So we're getting a lot of inquiries and a lot of people are very worried. So please, will everybody just keep reminding their employees that, you know, these are the rules. And then when we look at British citizens who are residing in Europe, we know that they have Article 50 residence application, which in the main have to be made on June the 30th or by June the 30th, which is next Wednesday. And there are various different rules in different countries. So some countries have extended the deadline, but for those that have the deadline on the 30th of June, it's Croatia, France, Germany, Greece, Latvia, Luxembourg, Malta, and Slovakia.
So 30th of June is really, really soon. So, I mean, are people like you, you know, you and other immigration advisors hugely under the cost at the moment? I mean, there would be a lot of pressure.
Getting calls all the time over the weekend, lots of long-standing clients telephoning me. And yes, people are very busy, and obviously we're really concerned to protect everyone. So UK nationals and their family members who are living in Europe, residing in Europe, and don't apply by the 30th of June, if they're in France, Latvia, Luxembourg, or Malta, they may lose the rights under the withdrawal agreement. And in Germany, late applicants might have difficulty proving their status. And in Croatia, Greece, and Slovakia, late applicants may face fines. So that's really a very important message. The other thing to say is that whilst it's obviously very important if you're a UK citizen and you're residing in Europe to make the Article 50 application, the population that we feel that's probably more at risk are those that are not residing in Europe, but British citizens who habitually work there. And I think that it's only really just dawning on people that they can only really spend 90 out of 180 days. And it's not 90 out of 180 days excluding vacation, it's including everything. So if, for example, you have...
Correct me if I'm wrong, but those days are anywhere in the Schengen area.
Exactly, Brian. Anywhere in the Schengen area. And a day is counted as a day, any few hours in a day. So, and so if, for example, you had, a partner in France or a great friend in France, and you were visiting for family, for personal reasons, or you had a house in Spain, or that's all going to be counted with your work trips. And so it's really, really important that companies track the number of days, because people can easily get up to that number. And whereas in the past, I think it was difficult for some in some border controls to track you. Now there are electronic borders, and so the risk is higher, and you could be excluded from the whole of the Schengen area. So if you were, it's not just you be excluded from France, you could be excluded from the whole of the Schengen area. So this is a really
what's different. I mean, I just know from personal experience, having been in Portugal a few weeks ago on my vacation, is they're now stamping your passport.
Exactly.
So
exactly
there's no getting away from it.
Yes. So that's really, really important. And then of course there's the posted workers, which is a real nightmare for everyone. And it's important to realize that they can apply to British citizens. And then I just wanted to say that the EU are working towards a sort of digital EU ID. And the one commission official said recently that digital projects are getting priority, and that's, you know, real priority of the EU. What we have seen is that there's 13 countries now in the EU that have got together to have this sort of vaccine certificate, which is for EU citizens in those 13 countries. And as you will have seen, that some countries like France, for example, if you've been double vaccinated overseas, you can travel into France. I think that some people, myself, who've had one vaccine in one country and one vaccine in another, are going to face problems. I shall let you know about those soon. But I think it's quite difficult because on my UK app, the doctor's surgery was really kind and tried everything they could to get my Dubai vaccine on my app, but they couldn't do it. So I think this is going to cause a lot of problems. And have been aware of some people in the world who've had difficulty proving that they've been vaccinated. So that is a concern. And then the final thing I wanted to say is that the US have been added to the green list, which is fantastic news. So it means if you're a US citizen and you want to go into Europe because the US have made such progress on the vaccinations, you can now travel into Europe, and you're not faced with the travel ban. So that's really good. And I know we've got lots of real good experts here, Fiona from France and Henry, and I know there's a lot of people listening now who are very familiar with these European rules. But I think, you know, the message is it's the 30th of June, and really it's very serious.
Absolutely, and this has all come about because of Brexit, which is actually, for those who don't know, is actually today is the fifth anniversary of that particular decision, and now we're really starting to see the implications of that decision, you know, coming through in no uncertain way. Anyway, Julia, it's been great having you on the show. We'll see you again next week, hopefully from Dubai. I think you'll be there. Maybe not by Wednesday, but fairly soon. Okay, well, once again, many thanks for being on the show, Julia. Please, audience, do give your appreciation to Julia. Let's see those the green applause, the blue ticks, the hearts, and also give it up for our next guest, because we're now going to go on to a hugely topical subject, which is Core Flex. I'm delighted we've got Michelle Durkin with us, as well as Nitzan Yudan. So we'll go straight onto that now. So let's go in and talk about Core Flex. And thank you again, Julia.
Thank you, Dan.
Michelle, Nitzan, great to have you on the show. Michelle, a couple of weeks ago you were hosting, and now you're my guest, so I've managed to turn the tables on you. How did you enjoy hosting?
It was so much fun. We had a blast. So thank you for that honor. It was a lot of fun and a real pleasure to do so. So
well, I know the audience absolutely loved the show that you put together. So well done. Really appreciate your help. And Nitzan, as ever, great to see you. So we're going to be talking about Core Flex today, which I think is such a topical issue. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle and Nitzan, but I think we've seen a lot of companies now, and maybe it's a post-pandemic thing, maybe it's just something that's come through, technology or mindset changes, but people are looking for flexibility these days, whether it's lump sum or Core Flex. Is that what you're seeing as well? This interest in flexibility in programs?
Absolutely. I think I feel like it has gotten a new resurgence of discussion and acknowledging people's different needs. There's different family sizes and shapes, and I think the needs of the employees, and which goes to the employee experience, is really lending itself to having this resurgence and new discussion about Core Flex programs. And maybe it is the pandemic that has spawned it. I'm not totally sure, but it's exciting. I think it's something new again, if you will.
Yeah, and I mean, just for anyone, just to sort of get terms sorted for people who may be confused, but I expect most people know. But just what the difference is. I mean, lump sum is when you just say to people, "Here's a chunk of change. You got this amount of money. You can spend it on whatever you want." And Core Flex is where you say, actually, these benefits you're offered, you don't have any choice in, and then there's other benefits that you might have some level of flexibility in the choice. You or the organization might have a little bit of flexibility in the choice. And we'll get into that. I suppose in a way, lump sum is the ultimate flexibility. You just say to people, here's whatever, $20,000, go and do whatever you want with it. But, are we seeing, what are we seeing in terms of where companies are going between lump sum and Core Flex? Are you getting any feeling about that?
I think lump sum is still common. I think it has been there. It is there. I feel like the Core Flex is starting to gain popularity. Listen, over the years, I know there are a lot of organizations who don't like the idea of Core Flex, just giving somebody a lump sum of money to do what they want with, that they don't have control. And this is somewhere kind of meeting in the middle, not so rigid from your traditional policy, but not just handing them, $20,000, $30,000 to do what they want. So it's a bit of a managed, a more managed flexibility approach.
Okay. And I know a lot of people have got very strong views on lump sum. I mean, a lot of people think that, they don't like lump sum. A lot of people think they love lump sum. I think it's really important to say that from our point of view, we're not being judgmental. We don't, certainly from a Benivo point of view, we are neutral as to what sort of policy people might want. We just want to provide the technology that supports it. But today, our focus is very much not on why you should have a Core Flex policy, but if you want to have a Core Flex policy, how you should do it. So it's very, very practical. And I know, Michelle and Nitzan, you've collaborated to put together this playbook, and we're going to go through it, the whole process, and we're going to demo it. Nitzan, maybe you could just say to us a little bit about how you can actually get this playbook.
Yes, and maybe I'll just share my screen, also show that, so it's easier for everyone, and later we'll also share the link. So it's as simple as going to Benivo.com, to our website, and here there is a banner that says download the playbook. I click on that.
You can't see it. It's the green banner right at the top of the screen.
Yep. And when I click on it, I can just enter my details, click submit, and that will get me the PDF document, straight access to it, where I can see the 9 steps guide with some great visual from our design team and fantastic content from Michelle and Matthew Cheek, our Chief Commercial Officer, who worked with more than 10 companies really to get the insights of how are they implementing it now, what are the core decisions that need to be made, and not just asking, as you said, not just asking the questions by giving the answers. What do other companies do today in order to solve those challenges and what they are implementing that? And it's really all here, all available, highly recommended to download. We've seen unbelievable interest in that since we published it last night, with hundreds of people, hundreds of companies already looking into that. So looking forward also to hearing the feedback here on the call, but that's on this show, but that's available on this link.
Okay, so we'll come back to that in a moment, but it's very, very simple. As Nitzan said, all you have to do is go onto Benivo.com and just download the playbook. You will not be disappointed. It's I've read it. I wasn't involved in writing it. I just read it cold, and I think it's a fabulous document. So all credit, especially to you, Michelle. And I know you interviewed a lot of major companies in putting that together. And it's basically a how-to guide. It's a 9-step playbook as to how to actually implement a Core Flex policy. So maybe what we should do, we're going to get into a demo later, but let's just talk through that. And by the way, we're keen to get the audience as involved as possible. So if you've got questions as we go through, if there's things you want to talk about, what works, what doesn't work for you, or then let us know, and engage with us. But anyway, I suppose the first step with the 9-step, I mean, we've got 9 steps, so maybe the obvious way to do is to let's start at the beginning. Let's start with step 1. So Michelle, just tell me about the first step of the process, which I believe is called determine your budgeting strategy. So talk me through that.
Sure. I think when you compare a Core Flex program to more traditional programs, you can expect the utilization of your, sometimes they're called situational or optional type components to increase. Generally speaking, those Core Flex, the Core Flex policies don't generate cost savings in general. All right. If that's your goal, you're probably not going to achieve it in a Core Flex scenario, because those traditional services that were not always being utilized, things like schooling or spousal support, now become part of your flex benefits. And so while employees may not need spousal support or schooling, they may be choosing other things like cleaning services or Uber vouchers or an extra home leave. So
what you want to do is set your budget at the level of your actual spend, not your notional spend, because with a traditional program, there can be some benefits people don't take. With a flex thing, you can assume pretty much 100% take up of something. And there is an example outlined in the playbook that folks can look at. But I think you should assume 100% utilization of those core and flex benefits. And a good, best practice would be to be doing a budget to actual, every 6 months or every year to kind of see where you're trending and tracking. Okay. One of the questions I've just seen from Nicola has come up is the only thing I'm concerned about is how to sell it to the business, especially to organizations of considerable size. We are going to get into that towards the end of this process. That is in the process. That's part of the change management that comes later on. So Nicola, bear with us. We will get onto that. I'm going to go through because there's an awful lot to get through. So I'm going to move this conversation on fairly rapidly. So step 2, okay, you determined your budgeting strategy, and there's more. Please do download the playbook. There's loads in it. But step 2 is defining what the core benefits are. And that's a huge issue. So Michelle, just tell us a bit more about how we define the core. So these aren't the flex benefits. These are the core benefits. Correct.
And I would say in general, those core benefits tend to be around compliance and duty of care. So things like immigration or tax, but also things like temporary living or travel to the new location, because those things are items that people need. And they become part of the core and not part of the flex. And listen, for the audience, tell me what else you've seen as part of core. But my experience has been that it is around compliance and duty of care in general.
Okay, so that's step 2 is working out your core benefits. You said it's things like tax, immigration, temporary accommodation. It will vary, but it gives you a good idea. So we've done that, and again, as I said, we're going through at a speed of knots. So please do download the playbook for more information. So then step 3, having worked out what your core benefits are, you then need to decide actually who decides on the flexible benefits. And when you say who decides, you're basically saying, is it an employer decision or an employee decision? So talk us a bit through that.
Sure. So of the companies that I spoke with, there were really 3 scenarios here. The first one being that it was completely the business's decision, and companies take this position because the businesses have different budgets. I've heard this, can't even tell you how many times over the years, that one business unit would say, well, it's my budget. Why do you get to say what we can spend or what we can't spend? So this is where the business decides what the budget is. They will likely talk to Global Mobility about what those benefits are. Maybe or maybe not, a needs assessment is done with the employee, but ultimately the business decides how much budget they have and what that employee is going to be offered. So that's scenario 1. Scenario 2 is really a mixed decision between the employee and the business, where the business has a budget. There is likely a discussion with the employee about what their circumstances are, and they likely have a few choices and decisions to be made within that budget. And then the third being 100% employee choice. So giving the employee full autonomy to decide what services they need and want for their family.
Yeah, I think this is a major issue of sort of almost like nomenclature, because to my mind, whenever I think of Core Flex, I always think it's a situation where the employee can choose which of the flexible benefits they want, a bit like a cafeteria remuneration system. But I am aware of some companies that have Core Flex, but what they mean by Core Flex is that the employee still doesn't have any choice. It's just that the line can decide which benefits are offered to which employees within an overall policy. So you need to decide which sort of Core Flex you want, and it's almost like 2 different animals with the same name.
Yep. And to add to that, I think a lot of it depended on the level of the employee, the reason for the assignment. So those things were also factored in as well, in terms of how a company was approaching those choices.
Okay, so that's step 3, and as I said, I'm moving it on fairly quickly. The next step, of course, is to decide what are the flexible benefits that you're offering. Mm-hmm. And what we've got there, we've called it in our step 4, there's traditional benefits and non-traditional benefits. So maybe Michelle and Nitzan, you can talk us through what you mean by a traditional benefit and what a non-traditional benefit are. Nitzan, do you want to sort of kick off with that one?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting concept that got opened up through the introduction of flexible benefit. And I'll give the credit for one corporate we talked with about 1.5 years ago, and was the first one we went with Core Flex with, and they gave that idea and that concept of why do we actually limit the benefit to a set number of kind of what have been done before, and how can we reduce exceptions and increase employee experience, and basically open up the options to choose more. So what are the things they wanted to do? The first ideas they had were brilliant. They thought, someone just moved their life from one place to another place. Let's help them keep the same lifestyle, just for an easier transition. So if they used to go for swimming lessons with their kids, or to yoga, or something like that, just, obviously not cover it for the entire move, but just in the beginning to give them that feeling, and again, let them choose, right? So that was one area of those non-traditional benefit. Others were more like specific to the move. So for example, cleaning service in your home or host location, or a handyman that will come for a couple hours and help you assemble furniture or set a few things. Even food delivery, so some until we sort out the kitchen and open all the boxes and find out where did we actually put the salt. So get some of that, and all those ideas actually now became available to the employees to choose, and that's what we call the non-traditional benefits. And what we've basically done is we brought that into the Benivo experience. So when an employee is going there and choosing the benefits, they can choose between the traditional to the non-traditional services, and we can deliver on that. Or if the company wants the RMC to deliver that, and the RMC is willing to offer those additional services, we're of course happy to partner and let them deliver that. But the important thing is to give more choice to the employee, as well as the tools to make that decisions. And we'll talk about that on the next step.
Absolutely, because once you go into the concept of flex, then actually, to a certain extent, the world is your oyster in terms of the benefits that you want to offer. And the only thing that restricts you in many ways is your imagination, or maybe even the imagination of your assignees, as you get their views as to what might be a really good benefit to add in. Okay, so the next step, that's step 4. And again, there's more on it in the playbook. I know I'm sort of sound like a broken record here, but please do download the playbook. Is that step 5 is how are you actually going to do it? Are you going to go with a cash-based approach or a points-based approach?
Yeah.
And I know that, again, there's 2 schools on this, but Michelle, do you want to talk us through the difference between cash and points?
Sure. I will note that I think it was split about 50-50 of the companies I spoke with about who had cash and who had points. And I think the other interesting part is that it seems that more recent conversations with companies that are thinking about implementing the Core Flex are leaning towards the points system. And listen, I think there's pros and cons for both scenarios. I think on the pros side for points, there is less focus on the cost, right? And there's more focus on the actual services. When you think about and there's less requests for cash outs if that is part of your policy. On the con side, there's probably more work to do. You need to come up with a mechanism for setting the number of points and then managing those points. And I think the other con is if you are in a point system and you have a repayment agreement as part of your policy, at some point you do need to disclose what the total cost is, because if you have a repayment agreement, you have to be transparent with the employee what the cost of that relocation is, should they be on the hook for some type of repayment.
Okay, but what we've seen historically is that most companies have gone for a cash-based system, but we think we're seeing an emerging trend towards points. And the companies we've spoken to, it tends to be about 50-50. So there's no right or wrong answers here.
No,
you just need to go into it with your eyes open and say, what sort of system do you want and understand? Mm-hmm. Another very topical issue that I know people are talking about is, should people be allowed to cash out? Mm. And we actually did a poll on that, but and let me just say what the poll said, and then maybe get into what the survey that you did said, Michelle. But we basically said this is where people are allowed to cash out some of the, or all of the cash, or all of the flex element for cash. And we gave people basically 3 choices. No, you can't cash out. Yes, there's a limited ability to cash out. Or yes, you can cash out in total. And Michelle, what did people say, when you were interviewing them in your research?
I believe most companies were not giving the option for the cash out, if memory serves me right. Yeah. And really, there can be 3 schools of thought when you look at the cash out. One, the strictest approach is going to be not allowing that cash out at all. Your middle ground is allowing for 50% cash out of unutilized benefits. And then the ultimate cash out is allowing an employee to say, I don't want any of the flex benefits. I want all the cash. So now you're kind of back at your lump sum approach.
Yeah, and I saw Trish McDonald from Westinghouse put on LinkedIn that yes, they do allow cash out. But in terms of what the poll said that we did, and a poll obviously is just a poll. What it said is 19% said no to cash outs. A whopping 72% said yes, there should be some ability to cash out, but not total. And only 9% said there's a complete cash out. And interestingly, I know you've referred to this, Michelle, is that some companies who say you've got some ability to cash out, what they mean by that is you can either cash out certain benefits or you can cash out, but there's a disincentive to cash out. There's almost like a gain share cash out. You can cash out, but you don't get the full amount if you do cash out. Anyway, I think we've spoken, for quite a long time now about the how of implementing a program. We're going to go into a bit more. We're up to, for those paying careful attention, we're up to step 5 of the 9-point process. But I'd like now to maybe just break away for a moment and go into a bit of the demo of the technology, because I think that will give people a real idea as to what a Core Flex policy using a technology solution can look for. So Nitzan, do you just want to sort of talk us through a bit of a demo? Shall I share your screen here?
Yes, please.
Okay, talk us through what we're seeing.
Great. So what we are seeing now, and I'm not going to do a full demo of the Benivo platform. Those who've been with us have seen it now a few times, and if not, we can see how to arrange that. But I want to focus on a new tab that we are adding here that is called Benefits. And the idea here is to include the core and the flex in one place where I can go. And in this case, we are seeing a point system, but the same works for budget, right? For us as a technology company, it doesn't matter if it's points or dollars. This is just the currency, but the experience for the user can be tailored accordingly. So I can see that as the employee, I have 200 points. I haven't used any of them, and that is going to be used for my flexible benefit, those that I'm going to select. But before that, I can also see my core benefits, and I'll get to that later in terms of what can I see in terms of what was already selected for me or given to me by my employer, as well as the status and more details on that. We'll look at that in a couple of minutes. But let's start the process of selecting. And what we've tried to create here is make that decision-making for the employees much easier. And for that, we took ideas from Amazon, and we created an Amazon-like experience, a shopping cart that allows me to go, see what's available, and then avoid the challenge of having too many options, right? Because that's the other trade-off of being flexible. Now you have 20 options that people don't know what to choose. So how do we help them to make those decisions? And what we did is what works anywhere else, right? Is the ability to see which benefits did my colleague selected. So I can see between pet shipment, only 5% are choosing that. But 50% go with tax filing, 50% go with packing materials, and 80% are actually using the additional 30 days of temporary housing. So I should probably keep some points for that because that seems to be popular, right? Or a need, especially in that specific location I go to. Right, so everything can be customizable, and I'll show that a little bit later in terms of how that works. In addition, I can also see the reviews. What did other people say about it? And I can go and I can read the full descriptions of what is the service and what Natalie, who experienced that, had to say about this provider. And I can go ahead and just choose what services I want to activate, and I can see I've selected one. I've used 60 points. I have 140 points remaining.
So once again, using the Benivo philosophy, what we've got is employees are being guided in their decisions by those who have walked those steps before them in years gone by.
Exactly. And that's how we, as consumers, and we are all consumers, how we make the same decision in our day-to-day life. We took those concepts and brought that into the mobility experience. In everything we do, now we're showing how we do that in Core Flex.
And this is what we call an Amazon-style user experience, where we're using the Amazon concept of user reviews to develop that into this whole concept of Core Flex, and indeed any other program.
Exactly. Good. So next I can show a few more benefits, right? So I can look between those benefits that are available for me. I can submit the decision, kind of, do my checkout and submit that. When we submit it, there are two routes. It can either go and directly initiate the RMC or the vendors, or it can go for a review by either the in-house team who will do a call to review that with the employee, or with the RMC if the RMC is delivering on that service. So the idea here is we are not replacing any RMC in the process. We are adding that ability to make decisions in a self-serve model in a way that is it's very intuitive for the employee to work with, and still benefit from the range of available traditional as well as non-traditional services. After I make those choices, and I, of course, don't have to choose everything now, I can also choose some of these benefits, keep some points for later. So I've now utilized 140 points. I have 60 points left that I can use at a later stage. And now I can see what's the status of each of these services I've selected, right? So so we talked about the Amazon experience. One of the things we all like about Amazon is that things arrive fast, right? And even when they are on the way, we can see where they are at any moment. Or when we order a food delivery on Uber Eats, we like to see where is our food at every moment. We took the same concept and brought them here. So I can see with every service, what is the current status of the delivery? So I can track the progress, I can learn more, or I can publish a review, right? I can share my experience of engaging with this provider so others will get that information. And we are gamifying that experience. So for every review that I'm sharing, I'm getting rewards. And those rewards are charity donations and other benefits that I can receive for helping others. So really gamify that and made that a fun experience. And before wrapping up the demo, I'm just going to show one of those. We call them Benivo trackers. So the ability to see what's the status of my service delivery. I can see that there are 5 steps. I can see how long each step will take, whether it's 2 days or 3 days. So who should take an action? Will I need to do something, or will the provider will do something? And really help me manage the expectation, right? So I have less uncertainty, less questions. I'm in control of my move, and I can be proactive about managing it.
Okay, so thank you for that, Nitzan. I think that's really helpful as a demo, and it's very, very cool technology. So all credit to you and the guys at at Benivo who've developed it. I know they've been working really hard on that. And I know there's also been a bit of debate going on in the LinkedIn comments about the pros and cons of lump sum or core flex. I've been seeing that. I'm going to steer the conversation away from that, because the assumption here is that these are companies who want to implement core flex, and it's how to implement core flex if you've made that decision. And appreciate that it's actually perfectly valid to say core flex doesn't work for our organization. But assuming then we've gone through I think we've been through 5 stages. We determined the budgeting strategy, we determined the core benefits, we decided who decides on flex benefits, we talked about traditional and non-traditional benefits, and we talked about cash versus points. So, and then we showed a bit of a demo. The next stage then is we've at this point decided what we're doing, okay, but we've got to find a way of actually implementing. So we need to start getting into the implementation side. And that's all about the change management side. And I suppose there's step 6 in our playbook. And you may have heard me say this before, but please do download the playbook for more information. But step 6 is, how do you manage the change? So, Nitzan, I mean, do you want to just talk us a little bit about change management and that process as well?
Yes, and if you could share my screen, that would be great. I think one of the areas where it's critical that we invest time and resources is in how do we gonna make that a success, because there is a change to manage. There is a change with the business, with the employees who moved before and might move again, and there is a model that calls the Kotter's model. It's here on the playbook, as you can see it. Now, I'm not going to go in and cover all of that, but all the information is available in the playbook, and we are happy to support anyone who is working into implementing that. But on high level, the model is about creating the climate for change, right? So identifying how do we create urgency, how we put the right people, how do we make sure it happens now? Then the second part is about getting quick wins. How do we communicate? How do we empower it into action and make it happen so it starts to happen? And the third one is around making it a habit, right? The third part is about how we make it stick, how we make sure that that's something that stays in the organization by measuring, by iterating, by continuing communication. And all, as I said, all of that is available here.
Okay, so that first stage is all about what people call the burning platform. It's to create that feeling that, that the organization has to change, and how you actually create that environment. And then I think you put a great point in there in the second stage is don't necessarily focus on perfect, but make sure what you are doing is you're generating some quick wins to really get the feeling right that this is something the organization should be doing. And then, as you said, the third stage is all about implementing and sustaining that change. So we've talked a bit about the change management. We could do a whole session on change management, but let's just put that to one side. The next step then, having managed the change, is, and I'll pass this one over to you, Michelle, is actually writing the policy. Now, I mean, interestingly, when I first read it, I thought surely you should have written up the policy a lot earlier before you started looking at the change management. But what you're saying is, make sure you understand how you're going to do the change management before you get too much down in the detail, because I suppose you could waste an awful lot of time writing a policy that actually is never going to fly.
Right. I mean, kind of along the way, you're building your framework. But I think at the end, once you've got that buy-in from your stakeholders and leadership, all right, now you have to pull all the pieces together and write an actual policy. And I say a policy, but then again, it could be more than one policy, right? Or is it domestic? Is it international? Is it both? Is there a renter version versus a homeowner version? So there may be multiple policies to be written. And then I think, every organization is going to be different, whether or not they have the in-house capabilities for somebody to write it themselves in-house, or is this something that has to be outsourced? And I think, like with any policy, the policy has to be reflective of the company culture, right, and style and language. So if you are going to outsource it, make sure that whoever you're outsourcing it to does understand your company culture, so that the language is appropriate. In my experience, comprehensive policies in general include some type of mission statement outlining the company's mission about why they use mobility. I think definitions, especially in a Core Flex, are important, defining what the terms are, who the players are, and then outlining what those core and flex benefits are. If you're going to have a cash out approach, detailing how that works. And then, if applicable, having that repayment agreement is core critical. Outlining, how that works. Is it 12 months? Is it 24 months? And having that transparency if you're in a points system.
Okay. And whilst we're chatting, I'll be quite interested to hear from the audience. If there's any in the audience who've implemented Core Flex. I know we had Trish from Westinghouse on there, and I'm sure there's others on there. If there's any corporates out there who've implemented Core Flex, it'd be very interesting if you could just give us your comments in the comments box about, what has worked, or what you think, lessons learned, or any other experiences. If you're able to share with the audience, that would be really helpful. And those of you who are consultants, if you've worked with companies on Core Flex, companies have actually implemented it. If you could, again, give us your thoughts on learnings that have come through on Core Flex, that would be really, really helpful.
I think the other thing I can add to that point, Brian, is that Benivo has teamed up with Air Inc., and we are actually doing for those corporates who are watching, we are doing a joint survey with Air Inc. If you haven't gotten an email about it, let me or Nitzan or Brian know. We'll make sure that we get you the details. But the survey is really asking that, do you have it? If you don't have it, or if you tried it and it didn't work, why? And so we're really trying to learn more about those organizations that either have it or tried it or are thinking about it. So so that survey, I believe, is open for another week or so.
Okay, and just looking at comments that came up here, I'll just take that. Actually, Trish, many thanks. She has listened to my plea, and many thanks, Trish. And she said, technology is key. Otherwise, it's too cumbersome to implement and will negatively impact the employee experience. I mean, I couldn't have written that better myself, because obviously from our perspective, at the end of the day, we are a technology company. We believe that technology is key. But Nitzan, do you just want to sort of, maybe address Trish's comment there about the importance of technology? Because, if you didn't have technology, presumably Core Flex would be a very cumbersome, difficult issue to deal with, because it adds complexity to your program.
Exactly, and that's our step 8, right? How to choose your tools. What we're seeing is if you have a small program with a small number of locations, you might be able to handle that in-house or with a spreadsheet. But once the program is significant and with more locations, in order to be able to deliver on that, it requires a technology tool. Because there are a few questions, I saw them before, about what, for example, how do you set the number of points? We have a whole section in the report, in the playbook, that is about how, should you put 100 points or 1,000 points, and what's the trade-offs between choosing them. And when you look at a technology solution, I think there are a few things to assess. First, can they deliver on dynamic pricing, right? Because the reality is that the number of points or dollars per service is not fixed. It's changing, right? So a relocation from a shipping from New York to Boston is not the same from London to Boston. And that means that we can't, if we're going to give the same number of points, we are going to create an issue here with the budget. So the technology needs to be able to calculate on the fly how many points to charge for the employee. As well as on the other side, because a family of two, or a family of 5, again, the number of points they will be maybe allocated, as well as that they will need to spend, is going to be different. And the tool need to be able to do that. That's some of the technology we've built to be able to create what we call dynamic pricing. So that's one criteria that companies should look at. The second thing is around the benefit selection. Giving a lot of choice can make a negative impact on employee experience. We need to also support them in making those decisions. We've shown the Amazon-like experience. Other would have different solutions, but when you look on your tools, make sure that that's something that actually comes as part of the self-serve approach. The third point to look at is what baseline support is provided. We haven't covered that on this demo, but on previous show, we talked about the digital destination, the digital brief, the fact that Benivo delivers on destination support, and the ability to do things by yourself on all areas of relocation, and that comes built in to our Core Flex experience. Because one of the challenges of lump sum and Core Flex is that in the traditional models, if there are no vendors, there's no support. If the employee did not spend money or points on something, they got zero support. And what we've changed is we've created a baseline support, this digital support available for everyone. And on top of that, they can utilize vendors in the areas where they want more hand-holding. So again, is baseline support provided or not? Another point that is important to choose a partner there is if you're interested in those non-traditional relocation services, as we talked about, the swimming classes, the yoga, the cleaning, if you want it, if it's available or not, right? So we need to see if that's available or not. And the two other things are more technology focused, about whether the development is done in-house. Is that a technology company you're getting, or is it a company that has outsourced services and someone has built it? And that's a key decision, because when you are buying from someone who outsources, you buy a fixed product that the company you are buying from has no control over it. Mm-hmm. And when you buy a product that is developed in-house by the company, they have full control. That means you'll get fast iteration, easier customization, fast updates, because that's the core business of the company. It's not dependent on others in order to deliver on that. So a key point here is to make sure that you're looking at how easy it is to make customization, and not just on a sales pitch, but actually ask to see it, right? How to see, talk to other customers who use that, how easy is to customize, how fast is the implementation. As a rule of thumb, if implementation takes longer than 30 to 60 days, that's probably a flag that also working with that product is going to be challenging and all the changes. So a few points, all well organized in the playbook, but about choosing the tools.
Okay, and those, we sort of moved on to step 8 there. Step 8 is to choose your tools. And as you were saying, Nitzan, it's all about whether you go an in-house route or outsource. And also, you talked about the implementation timescale. As a matter of interest, if I can just put you on the spot, if people were to implement Core Flex with Benivo, how long would it take to implement?
30 days.
Okay, you heard it here, guys. You heard it here, and that's a commitment from the CEO. So sorry to put you on the spot there, Nitzan. We're running out of time, but we said it was a 9-stage playbook. So, and we got up to step 8. So I suppose I ought to really get on to step 9, and then we'll wrap up. We might run over by a couple of minutes. But step 9 is how you, having implemented it, you measure, you iterate, and you optimize. And I don't know if Nitzan, you just want to sort of just talk to us a bit about that last step of the playbook.
Yeah, and we here think that the use of data is critical to make sure that the program is delivering on the goals. It's very hard to get things right on the first time. So measuring, iterating, and keep changing based on the result is critical. So what are the key things we identify that are important, or the companies we worked with identify that are important to measure? Is first utilization, core benefits, right? Are core benefits being utilized? If not, if it's below 75% utilization, they probably need to be moved to the flex. They should not stay as core.
That's a great point. So what you're saying is that if a core benefit isn't being utilized, then maybe it's not a core benefit.
Right. Yeah, and vice versa, right? If it's a flex benefit and you see utilization is going above 75%, it's probably a good reason to consider moving that to the core, because at least if possible, right? And so don't decide on one thing and then stay with it forever. Measure, see what the employees actually are utilizing, and adjust the policy accordingly. It might even change per location, and that's perfectly fine. We've seen companies putting different core and flex per location where the employee is moving to adjust that. The second thing that obviously is important is the actual cost versus budget. This connects to point 1 of the playbook that Michelle talked about, the fact that there might be higher utilization comparing to our old program, old policy. So important to keep track on that, looking at actual versus budget, and seeing if we need to adjust the number of points. Measuring employee experience, always important, always valuable, ideally on pulse surveys, not a long survey at the end of the relocation, but live as they utilize the features, as they utilize the services, in order to make sure that if there are issues, we can still resolve them, and also learn from that on very, very specific points. And finally, to measure the number of exceptions. We should expect that introducing a Core Flex policy will significantly reduce the number of exceptions. If that's not happening, we need to go back, investigate why those exceptions are still there, and how can we further update the program to make sure we cover that. Because until we've managed to reduce that, we kind of haven't finished our journey.
Okay, so thank you, Michelle and Nitzan. That is the 9-stage playbook. And I don't know if I mentioned this, but if you're interested, then do go on to benivo.com and download. It's free, by the way. Download the playbook. But also, if you're interested in Core Flex for your organization and you want to see a demo of the technology, then do contact any of us, and we'll happily organize a demo so you can see what it's like in practice, and we can do a real one-to-one on that. Many thanks. So there was so much engagement today. That was fabulous. And many thanks to everybody. We are, of course, back next week with The View from the Top. And once again, many thanks to Julia. If I could just ask the audience again in the normal way to get the applause and the likes button and the hearts out there to say thank you to our amazing guests, to Michelle, to Nitzan, and to Julia. And it's pretty much on the hour. I think on my little clock in front of me, we've got about 8 seconds to the end of the hour. So we're finishing on time. So thank you, everybody. And we'll see you all again next week. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.